I've been part of so many pitches recently as an investor myself, and I see how hard some of the startups have it nowadays. That's why I tell everyone, make friends, make as many friends as you can, because you might get opportunities along the way, and don't look for opportunities when you make friends. That's the whole point.
Biro Florin, who's a brilliant friend, been on Vested for many years and has already done an exit.
One evening late at night that I was so stressed, we were losing certain ranks, and I could see that rather than continue to grow month on month and so on, we were starting to slow down and thinking it might be better for us to get acquired. If it gets quieter and quieter, then something is wrong.
Welcome to FounderMetrics by Vested, the podcast where we dive into the world of hotshot business leaders and the specific metrics, not just the usual KPIs, that drive their game-changing companies forward. I'm your host, Ifti Nasser, CEO and founder of Vested, and I'm excited to take you on this journey with me into the world of successful founders. Do you want to start off with your journey as a founder and Jexo, just as a bit of background and what you're trying to do today with Misfits?
Yeah, how much time do you have?
Well, we have plenty of time.
Very long and intertwined story, right? Well, I'm Biro. I'm originally, as you probably can see from the accent, not from here. I was born and raised in Romania, in Eastern Europe. And that's where I started my entrepreneurial journey, I would say. I've been reflecting recently on how did I become an entrepreneur? Why did I get passionate about, doing business, working with people, leading, and so on? And I realized that it's kind of like from my dad. Like me growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur. He had his own business, and I kind of liked seeing that because, who's your first role model is your dad, right? So seeing that, I think it kind of absorbed a lot of the behaviors and thinking around business. And I think it was a bit of a no-brainer at one point for me to get into business. Tried a couple of things in Romania, nothing to do with technology or SaaS or anything like that. Made it quasi-successful, but then things went a bit downhill, and eventually decided to drop the business that I was running back then.
What was that?
It was hair extensions and cosmetics. So again, I told you, completely different. So eventually I decided to leave and move to UK. I had a couple of friends here. So then when I moved to UK, the first thing that I've done was to look for projects to do freelancing, basically offer me as it wasn't even the engineer term back then. At least I wasn't popular. I wasn't acquainted to it. Basically building websites for individuals. And I ran into WordPress, and kind of like that's the rest is history there. I got into freelancing. I've done that for a while in parallel, trying to build a variety of websites and services, all in the hopes that I can one day emulate a software as a service business, because I realized, I don't need to provide my services, and actually I can make money while I'm sleeping, like they say, right? So I was fascinated by that, and I was also fascinated by software. I was on websites for SaaS products that were listing SaaS products before Product Hunt was super popular. Right. So I was inspired by a lot of the stuff that I was seeing there, and I was trying to emulate it. I built chat widgets, I built hosting platforms, I built social media widgets, I built everything. Nothing really stick. So eventually I went into employment, and from that I spent 5 years of working for a company in London, and from that I started Jexo with my partner, and
So tell us a little bit more about what Jexo was.
It's interesting because Jexo started more like a lifestyle business, I'll call it.
Right.
That's what we wanted. We just wanted to build our playground. Basically, not having to work for someone else, by someone else's rules, and the type of culture that was growing, and is usually prevalent in large businesses, right? And we just wanted to have our small little work nook where we can continue to grow as product people, and just have a nice, relaxed.
But what was
lifestyle.
it? Tell us what Jexo was.
So we decided that we will build applications, B2B SaaS applications, project management more specifically, in a marketplace. And the marketplace was the Atlassian marketplace. So Atlassian makes tools like Confluence, Jira, and such. And they have a marketplace where you can actually install plugins into your Jira and enhance the functionality. And we decided to go down that route, one, because we knew Jira inside out. We were working with it. We've seen some lacks, some gaps that we wanted to fill with our application. And it's a lot easier to start a business, at least in my opinion, to start a business, a B2B SaaS business, part of a marketplace versus just launching
Trying
as a
to do it
standalone
yourself.
and do it.
Yeah.
Not to dishearten you, okay?
No, I'm not disheartened. I mean, we've. I guess we didn't go down the marketplace route in any case. I don't think
There's
it
still
was
time.
relevant. But maybe that's something for us to explore. But I guess everybody's familiar with things like Jira, Trello, etc., which are all part of the stable. So, how did you end up? What happened with Jexo that resulted in the exit? You said it was your playground, but you seem to have left the playground quite recently, probably earlier than most founders would do in the elapsed time of the business. So tell us when you actually really started Jexo, so that people can get that timeline in place.
Yeah, so, we started conceptualizing the first product in spring 2018. It took us 6 months to launch the first product, way more than we were expecting. We thought that in 3 months we'll be done. Foolish of us. So we launched our first product on the marketplace in October 2018. Didn't make a penny up until January 2019.
Right. So how did you cover the cost?
Well, we're still full-time employees. So we were working for 2 years for the company that we were working for, while also building our side gig, our business. And initially it was a side gig. So I think we were doing this because initially the first product, because we wanted to work on something cool. And as we were building it, we started getting these aspirations towards, how nice would it be for us to have our own playground and our own business and so on. So 2018 launched, didn't pick up until somewhere summer 2019. That's when we started seeing the first MRR, proper MRR, got 500 at the beginning of summer, $500 MRR. And by August, we were at $1,000 MRR. And that's when we realized, hold on a second. This is our aspirations might actually become true. And that's when we decided to pursue a way to exit our full-time jobs and do this full-time. And we knew that was through getting a seed round of investment.
Let's talk about that decision. When you got past a certain level, you understood that this was real.
Mm-hmm.
So you went out to a seed round. What was the story? What was the conviction, and who did you go to?
Well, when we decided that we wanted to get seed investment, I've kind of reached out and I was talking to a couple of people that I knew either from the company that I was working for or such. And a couple mentioned that they could introduce me to some wealthy individuals in UK that have money to spend because otherwise they'll pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like activated us into investment mode, right? Uh, Working towards getting investment. None of the UK opportunities materialized. And the actual investor that ended up investing in us, just like the whole opportunity came just randomly because there was this individual from Germany, Christian, that he has a company in the Atlassian ecosystem. So he's a marketplace vendor like us,
Right.
but a bigger one, making quite a lot of money when we met them. And we had regular conversations. In one of those conversations, this was when we were actively looking for investment. One of those conversations, I mentioned that we moved to Edinburgh, and we moved to Edinburgh to pursue some opportunities there. I asked me, "Oh, why are you doing in Edinburgh from London?"
Yeah.
And I mentioned that we're looking for investments, or we have some opportunities. And he told me, "Well, I'm looking to invest because I want to diversify a bit. So let's chat." Yeah, and that the rest is history.
So that was your SEIS round, I'm guessing?
No,
No, tell me more.
no, because we got investment from a company outside UK.
No, so
Right,
he
so
wasn't able to take
yeah,
advantage
it
of that.
wasn't SEIS. It was purely an investment from a company to ours. It wasn't even like an angel investor, personal, wealthy individual's investment. It was from a Christian's company into our company. So their company held shares into our company, and it was quite fast as well because I've been part of so many pitches recently as an investor myself, and I see how hard some of the
Yeah.
startups have it nowadays. And that's why I tell everyone, make friends, make as many
Yeah.
friends as you can, because you might get opportunities along the way, and don't look for opportunities when you make friends. That's the whole point. But we had him in Edinburgh. He came over. We had a nicely prepared pitch deck and
Yeah.
everything. He didn't care that much about it. We sat down. We had a couple of conversations. He was really keen on Nikki and I as the founders. He really liked Nikki and I as a kind of like power couple in a sense, and that's what drove him to invest. And to be honest, we're also not super hard headed. We're open to suggestions in terms of the investment structure.
Yeah.
And we made him an offer. He made a counter offer, and we're like, yeah, that's fine. It's not outrageous, and we're perfectly fine. You're gonna help us. And it wasn't just the money. He opened a lot of doors for us in the ecosystem because he knew a lot of
Yeah.
individuals and companies and so on. And also he provided some of his team to help us with marketing in the early days. So yeah.
I think that's a brilliant story. And again, it comes back to, firstly, serendipity, and secondly, the power of those networks. I mean, this is the second conversation that I'm having today that actually really, powers in on that connection and that network effect, which I guess we'll pick up on a little bit later as well. But as you were building out the business, I mean, we're talking about 2018 going to 2019, the investment. So, how you were going towards COVID. When you went into COVID or 2019, how big was the team? How did you? Right, I mean, it was just you and Nikki, or
There was no actual team. We got this is the craziest story ever, and I keep on telling this story because it's such a it surprises me because we were so lucky. I mentioned that Christian, our investor,
Gibbs.
came into Edinburgh. We chit chatted, and then decided to partner up. Well, this was happening in December 2019. So he came to Edinburgh in December 2019 to talk to us about investment. Then in end of January, we went to Berlin to meet his team and everything, and we kind of verbally shook hands in Berlin, and we started preparing everything for the investment, the agreements, everything.
Yeah.
And the pandemic hit in March
Yeah.
2020, and actually his co-CEO flew over to Edinburgh with the paperwork for us to sign the
Yeah.
agreement, and he didn't knew if he has flights back
That.
to go
So
back.
that was in March.
Yes, it was. So we signed in March. We
Yeah.
signed when the pandemic started, and it was a very lucky situation and chain of events because one, the company that I was working for got acquired in the same time, and I had share options. I was their oldest employee
Right.
there. I was there for 5 years. I was their first employee. I had share options, and I was ready to give up those share options to leave the company because I would
Yeah.
lose the share options and do my own thing. And the company got sold in February, and we got investment in March. And if the pandemic would have happened 2 months before, I've heard that the company that acquired the company that I was working for wouldn't have done the
Yeah.
deal. And Christian told us that he would have probably kept his money for a while to see what happens.
Everybody was on pause. Why?
Yeah.
Why deploy the
Yeah. But
capital?
he went with it because we were already quite deep into the
Yeah.
process of the acquisition. So there was this kind of like stars aligned. And then what that meant over the pandemic for us, we had I know that it's a terrible period and a lot of people suffered, but for us it was a bit smooth sailing because we got the resources that we needed. We started hiring remote as we were used to working remote anyways with a lot of our teams in the previous jobs, and just head down on execution, building the right products, putting structures in place for marketing and selling and so on, and not getting distracted with too many things because there's a lot of pressures in these kind of marketplace ecosystems to be present at events, to sponsor this, to do that. We didn't have to do any of that over the pandemic, which was great
Because
for
it was
us.
all virtual. Yeah. That period, you were remote from the vast majority of it in total
All of it.
anyway. And so how did you feel that? Yeah. How did you understand the metrics of the business? This is FounderMetrics after all. It's about understanding the core numbers like your MRR and your growth rates, etc., which you talked a little bit about. But given all of this happened, really the start and the end was all within that strange period we called the COVID times. But yeah, how did you know it was going well? How could you feel the pulse of the organization?
Well, there's a couple of points there. There's a couple of factors. One is we were in a marketplace. What does that mean? That means that we were getting constant traffic to our application landing page. And when you're in the marketplace, nowadays with, for example, the Apple Marketplace, the iOS and so on, and other overcrowded marketplaces, harder. But in smaller marketplaces, there are things that you can do to position your application high up in the ranks in order to get the right eyeballs on it. So we were getting the right eyeballs on the apps that we had. At this point in, let's say, end of 2021, we had 3 apps on the marketplace, and we knew how to position them. We made also friends to make sure that, we're considered for various programs. So we're getting a constant influx of traffic to those landing pages, as well as trial installations. And then over time, based on your trial numbers, it's easy to kind of understand how much of that is conversion, how much will drop, how much will not do a thing about it. So that's kind of what helped us figure out, because the trials in the Atlassian marketplace you can't control. So every single app needs to offer a 30 days trial.
Right.
So we knew upfront what's the income that we will get, and we were seeing that traffic constantly increasing, and we were able to forecast. Nikki and I had a really neat spreadsheet with installation counts, growth per month. What does that translate into actual conversions into paying customers, revenue, basically gross MRR per month, and then how can we spend that in people, contractors, expenses, marketing, and so on.
Although I'm sure there was so much that took place during this period, this is a 2-year horizon, 2 and a bit years, that we went from next to nothing to something and then exit. How did you know you were on your way to an exit, or were you not actually even anticipating it in terms of that time horizon at least?
We decided in 2021, as I mentioned, when we started, we just wanted to work with cool stuff, be able to make a bit of money to exist, and that was it. And I think in 2021, Nikki and I decided that the fate of Jexo will be to join a bigger team. And from then onwards, we started setting up things right. But if you're asking what that decision was, where did it come from?
Yeah.
How did we decide that?
How did you know you were there, or was it just a big surprise?
No, so again, we decided in 2021 that we will one day sell.
Yeah.
And the factors to that decision, were really a couple. Number one, the reason why we started the company was because we didn't want the intense stress and pressure of working for someone else under someone else's rules and having to be part of a culture that we might not be okay with anymore, and so on. And we realized that we were rapidly heading towards a place where Jexo might not be that different from that. Why? Because when we came into the ecosystem, it was a bit more relaxed, laid back. We were doing amazing stuff. We were building things. But the ecosystem the marketplace has continued to evolve and generate more money, because Atlassian will get more customers for Jira, for Confluence, and so on. Those customers find out about the marketplace and they want to buy more. So that increased. Like, to give you an example, it took the marketplace, I think, 7 years to get to the first billion in sales on the marketplace, and then 2 years for the second billion. And I think
acceleration takes place pretty quickly.
I didn't keep track. I think the third billion they made it in a year or something like that. But where there's money, there's interest. So that meant that from end of 2020, beginning of 2021, we started seeing a lot more vendors on the marketplace. It was just me realizing that one evening late at night that I was so stressed that we were losing certain ranks, and I could see that rather than continue to grow month on month and so on, we were starting to slow down, and thinking that it might be better for us to get acquired. There was that, and the second part was, Nikki and I have been here for a while. I've been in UK for now 14 years. Always been living under means and just renting and so on, and we wanted to just settle down, get a house, be able to be a bit more have a bit more tranquility when it comes to our personal life.
So that opportunity came up and you took it. In hindsight, do you feel that you made the right choice? I can understand absolutely the reasons why given what you had set out to do, given what was happening. For me now, in hindsight, it's obvious, but in hindsight for you, do you feel we could have stayed, we could have played a bit longer?
No. I think I I don't think about it like that, because I think if I think about it like that, I'll just exist in a world of what if.
I actually think that's an excellent piece of wisdom to share, and to have lived that journey and recognise that the what if is actually a distraction, isn't it? It undermines that freedom to play the next game, because you're thinking, well, if I'd have done that. So that's great that it came from you, because I think that's a piece of wisdom that I've heard from so many other people, but it doesn't quite come across so clearly as it has done in this. You've got the experience behind you. What have you decided to do with this?
Well,
Because this will come to many founders as well. It's not, you won't be the first, but it's interesting what you've decided to do.
yeah, well, I don't know. For me, in my mind, like, I couldn't stand still. Initially, when we decided to, when we were on the last phases of the acquisition and so
Yeah.
on, Nikki and I were thinking, well, we're gonna be with the company for at least 2 years. Let's focus on working for this company and then just live a bit more of a relaxed life outside work.
Yeah.
And not do the crazy evenings, late evenings, and weekends and so on. Honestly, I couldn't. It only took me 6 months for me to have such a big itch that I had to do something else, and that something else wasn't another business for profit. And this stems from my desire to help as much as possible, because I have this itch and I can't stand still if I don't provide value, right? Like, and before selling Jexo, I'm kind of like beating around the bush with what I'm doing, what I've started. But before selling Jexo, just give you the context. Before selling Jexo, I had a peer group of that I would help with advice and mentor each other and so on. And I've had so many conversations with various founders in my world. Had mentees as well, because I was a couple of steps ahead of some of the founders that I knew. And I really enjoyed that. I found it so fulfilling. I've also started the podcast and done a couple of videos sharing my thoughts when I was doing Jexo. And again, it just felt like you have so much inside, and then you're kind of like sharing it. You
Yeah.
kind of, it feels rewarding, and it helped me feel lighter, right? Because I feel, okay, I've done my bit. I've shared all of this information and knowledge with others. So that's why I decided to start a Misfit Founders, which is a community and a podcast focused on the challenges of building a business and those raw, real moments that we all go through that are not really highlighted in general in media.
I personally think that Misfit Founders is phenomenal insofar as there is that journey. Not many people actually experience it. Loads of people talk about it, in that second person stage, but there's a handful of people who've actually lived it and survived it, because it's a perilous journey. But coming back to Misfits now, in terms of how you're building it, and you're making lots of decisions, I know, and it's an iterative journey. But how will you decide which route you take it forward, and where is it today in terms of numbers of podcasts? How many people are in the community? Just to give a feel of how that's grown and the time scale.
The thing with the community is, the one thing that I've realized, this is probably advice for people out there that are trying to build a community as well. You have to have a strong core,
Yeah.
right? Something that attracts that community to collaborate, those individuals to collaborate, to share things and so on. And most of the time, successful communities come from having a product or a asset that they're there for and that they can work towards. So for example, if you're a brand or a thought leader and provide a course, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to build a community like a Slack community or something that it's kind of like an async communication or forum and such if you have that course, because people revolve around that, ask questions, they're invested in that specific product or resource. I started the community with this notion of, hey, we're all misfits, so let's build this in order to help each other. It hasn't really made waves yet, but I wasn't expecting it. But people are there and they know that if they need help and so on, they can reach out to me
Yeah.
or anyone
And
else.
you'll
in the
help that
community.
connection. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I accept all of that, and I guess that's the one thing that I'm now looking for you to share with me and those who will be watching FounderMetrics. What is it that will allow you to feel, and then put the other business to one side, but just around Misfits? What is it that you're looking that's going to make you feel, yeah, it's on the right track? Because even if it's organic, even if it's a tree, you will taper it. If it's growing in the wrong direction or sunlight, or you adjust, even though it's organic. So how will you know how to adjust the inputs from you as the founder into Misfits? Because otherwise you're just letting it go wild, which may well be what you want to do. But how will you know when to intervene and make a contribution?
Well, it's very simple. I get at least one or two messages either on LinkedIn or by email from people that discovered the podcast and kind of congratulate or tell me how it helped them because they watched this episode and it deeply resonated and so on. 1-2 per week. And I also know where they come from because they most of the time tell me, hey, I've learned about your podcast in the Startup Roadshow or here or there. So, I really love this and I watched an episode and I'm so impressed and I love it and so on. If that continues to grow, that's the most absolute positive sign for me.
Yeah.
Right. And one, because I know that if I'm getting 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 100 messages per week, per month, whatever, from people talking about how it helped them and how they want to chat to me to ask me the opinion on this and that and so on, it works, right? It means that we're growing, we're reaching more people, and the message is getting spread out there. And also because I know where that influx of comments and DMs and so on comes from, it means that I can also focus or double down more on that type of initiatives, right? Oh, well, these live events and talking about Misfit on stage works. Oh, being a guest on podcast works because I've gotten individuals to reach out to me. And, apart from that, there's also analytics on YouTube that I can see where the traffic is coming from. Is it coming from... I still do these things, right? They're not that critical because this is not critical for me for my existence or my survival and so on. I do it. So I do go. I'm curious. I do go to YouTube and check. Okay, this podcast had this much viewership from their source, that source. Okay, so what did it made it more discoverable on YouTube? Let's try to figure out. So those things still happen. But again, for me, because my values are different with this versus when I was running a Jexo in terms of generating revenue and paying all the employees and so on. I'm looking for those conversations and those people that come back and either become a community member, message me directly, or share or repost and say, hey, I found this podcast and I love it. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it's certainly helpful, and it's going to be something, I guess, when we're in the editing, we'll try and make it as clear for people as well, because I think there's some serious wisdom in there. And both journeys, as I say, both the shooting star and the long burn that Misfits is going to be, I think there's going to be gifts. You've already given one gift, there's a new gift in the making. So I don't think there's any worries about FOMO to be concerned about, Biro.
Let's just say that if it gets quieter and quieter, then something is wrong.
Yes.
Right? If Misfit Founders is shared and in people's thoughts and
awareness,
posts and awareness, and vocalize it and talk about it, then we're going into the right direction.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming in today, Biro. I think it won't be the first. It won't be the last. It may have been the first, but it won't be the last of our engagements in this way. So thank you very much.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me in this lovely studio and on the Vested podcast.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of FounderMetrics. Remember, the biggest of ambitions are within reach when you leverage the right metrics and strategies. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and never miss out on any future ones. And don't forget to visit us on www.vested.com for additional resources, articles, and exclusive content. Join our growing community of entrepreneurs and founders by following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, X, and Instagram. We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights. Together, let's continue to unlock and share the metrics of success and create a brighter future.